In this diagram, J is parallel to K, and the lines are cut by a transversal T. If the measure of angle 1 equals 4x minus 20 degrees, and the measure of angle 6 equals 5x minus 25 degrees, what is the measure of angle 2? Okay, and I'm going to start this problem off by just making a couple of notes of what I just read. I'm going to shift this up, take out my scratch paper, and I'm going to write down some notes about what I read. So I read J is parallel to K, cut by a transversal. And that's important for all those angle relationships like corresponding angles, alternate interior angles, and so on. And they also told me that the measure of angle 1 is equivalent to this expression 4x minus 20. And I want to write that down. Equals, I'm going to actually do this in blue so we can see it later. 4x minus 20 degrees. And they also told us that the measure of angle 6 equals 5x minus 25. So I'm going to write that in another color. The measure of angle 6 equals 5x minus 25 degrees. Okay? And those are my notes about the problem. Actually, I want to make sure I know what the problem's asking for. It's asking for the measure of angle 2. So I'm going to leave that blank or leave it with a question. That's what I'm trying to find. And these are my notes about the problem. And something that also helps me, since I'm working on an iPad, I might want to redraw this picture. So I'm going to quickly just make a quick sketch of the picture. Try to make parallel lines as best I can, cut by a transversal T. So I can call this line J, line K, and line T. And then let's see, how do they number the angles? Angle 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. And then 5, 6, 7, 8. 5, 6, 7, and angle 8. And I also want to fill in what I know. So they told us that the measure of angle 1 is represented by this expression. The expression 4x minus 20 degrees. So I know that's angle 1. Angle 6, I'm going to fill in that as 5x minus 25 degrees. And then I'm going to need to call on my vocab book for a little bit of help. I'm trying to find this measure, the measure of angle 2. And I remember my math teacher told me that when angles are adjacent or next to each other, they have a relationship. The relationship is, they're supplementary. They add up to 180 degrees. And although that might help me, I don't have anything here for angle 2. So I might want to come back to that. I'm going to put that on hold. I also see, flipping my pages here, that corresponding angles are angles that are in the same place on the parallel lines. So for instance, angle 1 and angle 5 in my picture here are corresponding. Angle 2 and angle 6, angle 3 and angle 7, angle 4 and angle 8. And the way I think about it, if I was to drag this parallel down the transversal, 1 would meet with 5, 2 would meet with 6, and so on. And more importantly about corresponding angles, their relationship is that they are congruent. So whatever one is, the other one's the same thing, right? Okay, so if I look back at my original picture, I can think of my two parallel lines. If I was to drag this down to meet with this one, what angles would match up? And I can see again, 1 would match with 5, 2 would match with 6. Oh, 2 would match with 6. So if the measure of angle 6 is 5x minus 25 degrees, well then this has to be the same thing. We just said they are congruent. The measure of angle 2 has to be congruent to the measure of angle 6 because they're corresponding. Okay, so that helps me out. Now, if I go back to my supplementary, I know that if I was to add up these two things, what's the relationship? Oh, they add up to 180. Okay, so my formula here to help me solve this problem is the measure of angle 1 plus the measure of angle 2 adds up to 180 degrees. So the way I would write that in math is the measure of angle 1 plus the measure of angle 2 equals 180 degrees, because they're right next to each other. And now I'm going to borrow a trick from Mr. DeFranzo, which is formula, substitute, and solve. And our formula here in this case is what we were just working with, angle 1 and angle 2. We know they add up to 180 degrees. That's our formula. So I'm going to rewrite that over here where I have a lot of space. 180 degrees. And now I'm going to substitute in what I know. And we know the measure of angle 1 right over here is 4x minus 20. And I'm going to bring down my addition sign. Now the measure of angle 2 we did not know, but we realize that these are corresponding, so they're equivalent, they're congruent. So for the measure of angle 2, I can just put in whatever the measure of angle 6 was, which is 5x minus 25 degrees. And we know these two things add up to a total of 180 degrees. So I've wrote down my formula, I've substituted in what I know, and now I am ready to solve the problem.